Welcome back to Old Guy REI. As usual, Mikey and I are back to talk about our last Wednesday accountability call. I don't recall the date. Was it the 23rd? I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was another good meeting. We had one new person join us. I believe he has a rental in New York. And we had a little bit of a conversation with him because he was saying that I think he's going to get married. He and his wife are looking for a place to live. He has family in New York, but I believe he's in California. Um, and mentioned that they would like to have kids in the future. A few of us had thoughts about that, thinking that since he's thinking about getting into real estate investing further, that it might be easier before they have kids to do that. I know you can't always plan around those kinds of things. Maybe that's not important to them. Um, but I think once you do have kids, it's a little bit more of a challenge to move forward, maybe quickly.
I know a lot of us are out of state investors, so it's good to have another person join the group.
Yeah, he was new to school, and we talked occasionally about the fact that these meetings started before school started, and we have a lot of friends and other investors that were here before that. But I'm glad we got to integrate it onto the school platform. We also one of our other friends who invests in the Florida market was talking about being able to or being ready to shift when the markets shift. I think they started with short-term rentals in Florida, and we're realizing with insurance costs and other things like that that they might need to pivot and maybe change markets, not states, but different areas of Florida, and do a different type of investing, maybe long-term rentals. I think we're still fairly young in our journeys that we haven't really had to pivot yet. Have you had any things come up that made you think you might need to change your strategy?
There is a shiny object syndrome. I do have that. I was looking at Hawaii, different properties. What shocked me was I was talking with the Allstate insurance agent. He was saying 9 times out of 10 they require hurricane insurance.
Hmm.
So I had gotten a quote for 1,200. That was just for the basic insurance. But the property I was looking at was single wall, and they said because of that, it's going to be higher. I was like, okay, that's not too bad, 1,200 for insurance. But when I got the hurricane quote, it jumped it up from 1,200 to 3,300. And it's just one of those things where every market is different depending on where it's located and something you got to roll with.
Yeah, we had the same kind of thing here too at on our primary because now pretty much all of California is in a fire zone, and there's three different categories. Our home falls in on level two, but that increased our insurance by about $1,000 a year just for that. Yeah, insurance is big, especially these days. Um, some of the other things we talked about on that meeting were, I guess we kind of got a little deep on our journey. Uh, one friend asked me specifically because we tried to get into real estate in 2007 around that time when before the crash, and we ended up losing those properties. We went through bankruptcy, but he was wondering if I would share why I thought we failed. And I told him, I'm always an open book, maybe a little bit too much sometimes, but we went into it the first time without any education. I had friends that were other contractors that had some rentals here and there, so they all had great stories. I think most of them self-managed at the time, now that I think about it, but I thought, the same thing. We'll grab a couple rentals and place tenants and everything will be great. But as we all know now, things changed. We had bad loans on those properties. Once they adjusted, we just couldn't keep up. So we ended up losing those. The group was a little quiet that night. But when I was talking to, it was Charles actually, I was talking to Charles about his question. And I told him I'm an open book. I mentioned to him that one of these days I would have to share the time that I almost went to prison. And that got a lot of attention thrown at it. They were anxious to hear me talk about that. So if people are thinking about coming to our Wednesday calls, you might want to keep coming because I don't know what night that will happen, but they said maybe after a couple of drinks we could discuss it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, stay
But
tuned.
what's that?
Stay tuned. We'll be on pins and needles for that one.
Please stay tuned. Um, and I felt a little strange because it seemed like I was, and I don't mind telling people about our situation, but I don't like to monopolize the call. But I also was talking about how I don't consider myself a teacher. I That's not what this channel's about and these meetings are about. But I would consider myself a facilitator, um, meaning I like to bring people together, people we can learn from too, right? And everybody can learn from each other, make connections, and that's been really evident over the last few months. And some great connections have been made. I mean, I can teach you about remodeling a house for sure, but as far as being a real estate investor, we're still learning ourselves. We're 4 years into it now. So I imagine in another 4 or 5 years, we might be able to teach some stuff, but not today. Um, did you did you hear anything during the meeting? Did you take away anything that I'm not seeing?
So there's a Three Amigos teachings. How are you running your numbers on the first time you tried? And what was the ninja process like? I was just interested in that.
Yeah, actually, one person did ask. Stephen was asking about maybe how to layer an offer, because there's the basic straight across, you offer what they're asking and that kind of thing. And then some people have done the 50-40-10 where they'll get a first and the seller carries a second, and then you come in with 10%. That could be a great option if the seller will agree to maybe lower interest rates for their portion, the length of the term, like a 5, 7, or 10-year balloon. And then he was also asking how much less he should offer if he wants to do what Zuber calls a disrespectful offer. And I think he was thinking 10%, but I don't think that's disrespectful. I think, you want to be 20 or 30% to kind of be disrespectful. Um, so we threw around some numbers on what sample property that he brought up. And like you mentioned before the call, before our recording today, they all thought the way I was analyzing it was super conservative. But you and I both know, and we have been conservative on the things that we've bought, and it was like still not enough, right? We've still had to come out of pocket for unexpected things. You recently had an expense. Are you okay sharing that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, because the thought of reserves just popped into my head, and you shared something earlier, if you don't mind.
sure. It was a tree. I thought it was a neighbor's. It's something I made a mistake on. When I looked at the parcel ID, sure enough, it was on my parcel. The tenant had said there were dead limbs in that tree, and it was really overgrown. So we said, let's get an estimate to trim it. Not only that, there were power lines going through it. Cynthia made a great point is I should check with the utility company. I know Matt just on his live he did today was saying he tried to do that too, and it would have taken them 6 weeks. So they said, let's just get it done with. Maybe since it's a long-term buy and hold for me, I should have checked and it would have turned out better. But I just figured, let's take care of it now, just because I was kind of worried how big it had gotten. And that came out to about 3 grand.
Yeah, that's a big, I guess it was a surprise. Like you said, you didn't realize it was on your property. It's something that you needed to take care of. So going back to reserves, that's super important. And you could analyze all day long, but something like that pops up and it just throws everything out of whack. One thing, again, you were speaking about earlier, and I really liked was that you're reaching out to other contractors in your area. You're in Hawaii, you invest in Pittsburgh, and your property manager has contractors and handymen in place, but you went outside of that to try to find someone that you could work with, and maybe just double check on prices and things. How's that going?
It's good just having Jack, and he does the Thursday calls of the Pittsburgh meetings on school. And I said he does landscaping work, handyman work, and I know he talks with arborists as well. I sent him all the information. I said, hey, what do you think of this price? How does it look to you? He's like, that's reasonable. And he gave me a great recommendation about looking at the liability and their license, make sure that that's all taken care of, and they have experience working with trees and power lines. So when I take all that into account, and in the future, I'm definitely going to be looking at trees. That's going to be a big thing on my mind. It's going to be part of my buy box, especially when it comes to power lines as well.
Yeah, I think most of the times in the past when we've talked about trees, we always talk about the one right in the front yard that probably is, you know, helping your sewer lateral deteriorate. But yours was a little different. It was a concern about branches and things falling on the house or on people. So that was great, that you had that done. And you also had a contractor come out and look at the newest place that you acquired, because you just want to stay on top of maintenance issues. I think you said there might be some water diversion that you need to do there.
That was great. This is a contractor that has been in like live streams and part of our group. So it was always someone I wanted to work with and just have people outside of the management company. He was great. He walked in, did a walkthrough of the entire property, showed me some things that he would recommend taking care of. And this is something I was asking him, hey, let's just have a continuous working relationship. That's what I'm interested in. And he said he had no problem with that. And I said, just following up with what Matt teaches is once the work's done, once we have pictures and video, I'll pay you right after. So I think it was 10 o'clock his time, and I got the invoice and I made sure to pay right that second because I just look forward to getting this working relationship growing on other properties as well.
Yeah, and building a team there, right? I think, you basically do have a team in place because of your PM, but sometimes, like in St. Louis, our PM, his guys might be a few weeks out, so he's okay with us finding another contractor to do something. So we've had a little bit of luck there, and that's always nice. But they won't manage that guy if we hire someone outside of their company. So that's something to think about. One of the other things that we talked about on the meeting, or a couple of things, one was someone asked about the HELOC that we were trying to get on our primary, and we didn't have luck with that because the lender, what I've been finding is the lenders will kind of, give you a link, and it's kind of an automated process, and that hasn't been a good experience for us. In our case, we turned in our taxes and our, um, a couple of other pieces of information, bank statements and things like that, and that didn't show enough income, so they needed added income, but when we tried to add Cynthia's got a retirement account, and one time before they needed her to start making draws from it to increase our income, but it wouldn't accept that company's information, so I just gave up on that process. But now my next mission is to try to be in position in case rates do come down enough to refinance some of our properties, to just do rate and term refis so that we can create greater cash flow and optimize things while we have the opportunity. So I reached out to Aaron Chapman, who helped us purchase a couple of the properties. I'm waiting to hear back from him. And you mentioned that you heard about another mortgage company or mortgage broker was Old Missouri Bank. And, you know, for our properties in St. Louis, that might be a great connection. So I'll reach out to them too and see if they have any options. In my head, I'm thinking that we might have to go DSCR if our income's been an issue, because we don't make a ton, but that always seems to be the issue. And so maybe we'll be able to find a DSCR loan that would help us out.
And when we talk, you were just mentioning the property managers you were talking with, the networking you're trying to do, and this is just the week to week type of things that needs to be done, where we're just trying to follow up with what our teachers are telling us. I'm sure I could be better, but we're trying to win on the margins, and I think that can go a long way in the future.
Yeah, I think you know, the old saying, practice makes perfect. Maybe it doesn't make us perfect, but it gets us more comfortable at doing it. You know, once you do it once or twice, calling around, each time you have better questions for a PM if you're interviewing a PM, or just the process of firing a property manager. I've mentioned before that it took me too long to fire a couple that we fired in the past, and it cost us more money than it should have.
Me too.
But but we learned from it, and hopefully the ones that we're hiring are going to be good ones. It's just, you know, kind of like Dion says, you know, you buy a place and then the concerns change, right? First it's, can I buy a place? Then you get a place. Then it's, can I rent the place? You get it rented. Is the tenant going to be a good tenant? And it just goes on and on. But I think reaching out, connecting with these people, insurance agents, whatever it is, to get real information. I also mentioned to you that the property that we have in Gary, when we purchased it, the taxes were set on the price that the turnkey provider bought it at, which was like $30,000 or $40,000. So the taxes were good in that analysis. But now that we paid $120 after the rehab was done and everything, and the taxes are quite a bit higher, and it took quite a bit of our cash flow, close to all of it. So these are things that we just don't know in the beginning, but it's a good hard lesson. So, you know, moving forward, we hopefully won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, the breakdown of you having the 1 hour meeting with one property manager, then you were networking with several other property managers, just trying to get an overall idea of their cost, what that would look like, timelines. Then you're comparing that with the people in our network who also have properties in the same markets, and you're making sure that's just all part of due diligence. And it's great to see. It's a reminder for me, we can always be doing more and networking more.
Yeah, and that was our message in the meetings over the last couple of weeks, right? Not just to, I guess, let things happen to us, because there's a lot we can do to make sure we're not spending more money than we have to, or letting things go longer than we have to, like the eviction process. That's what made me jump in and start connecting with all of our PMs, because all their processes are a little bit different. And I want to stay on top of them to make sure they're hitting all the critical dates and that way the eviction doesn't take longer than it needs to. So that was a plus over the last few weeks. You've heard me talk, and most people have heard me talking about the gun lady. The sheriff was supposed to go and get her out on last Thursday, but she ended up moving out on her own. So that was a good thing. She was moving out on Wednesday of all days. So we're waiting to see what the PM comes up with as far as estimates for turning the unit. And we're hoping that we'll be able to get a little bit more rent for that place too. So within a few days, we should have some numbers and we can share with people how that all worked out. The property in Gary, we may go through an eviction there, but we have until the 1st, a few more days to see if the tenant moves out on their own. And if they don't, then we'll move forward with eviction. So we'll have a couple of turnovers to do, but we'll get through it like we have been.
Chris, he also said consider the first deal and look at that as a 5-digit investment course, 5-figure investment course, and that resonated with me.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of newer people might not really understand that, but some of our mentors too say, you hear about somebody spending 15 or 20,000 on a mentorship course, and they always say they would rather buy a property with that, and you'll learn so much more. And it is true. With every property, you learn so much more. You do better, hopefully, each deal. But yeah, there's still going to be learning lessons and things we didn't see. And, if you're in a few different markets like we are, there's different challenges for each market. So I think looking back, although we were buying turnkeys and they weren't all in the same state, that's why we ended up in all the different states. But now, knowing what we know, I might like to concentrate on one market, maybe get into a little bit more better class or more expensive market, for lack of a better term. But we're learning, and we haven't had to go through bankruptcy yet, so I think we're doing okay. I'm not sure what the theme for this week's meeting will be, but we'll come up with something. A lot of people are actually enjoying the fact that I've been getting these recordings out in a more timely fashion. They were hungry for more, so we'll get this one out later today. Did you have any closing thoughts?
We ended the meeting about age and the point of being in the 50s and the 60s and the decline that you got. I would like to hear that.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. So I don't know how we got on the topic, but I was probably I was probably complaining about the fact that I can't do as much work as I used to be able to. I'm 61, and so I was just telling people that each year older that you get, you feel the effects exponentially. Like from 50 to 51, you might feel a little something, but 60 to 61, you really, or at least I did, really feel a big difference in, I don't know, just getting up out of your chair. You have to kind of stand up and straighten yourself before you try to take any steps. So it's kind of a funny thing on one side, but it's not funny. And that you bring that up, and it makes me think about what we were talking a little while ago. For me, that's kind of why I was in such a rush to make progress with real estate, because I'm at the age that I'm at, and I want to have some decent years that I can still enjoy things. And you are hoping to, retire in Japan, and you have a job that you considered a ball and chain for a long time. But, after Zuber's comment about, thinking of it as the key to your future instead of the ball and chain, I think that changed your mindset a little bit. But we always caution anybody not to, I mean, it's exciting and you just want to just take off and go when you know that you can, but all these little things come up, your tree, our turnovers, our evictions, and those kinds of things. So if you buy too much at once, you're really going to have a hard time. We had a hard time getting through it all last year, but we're hoping in a couple of years we'll be able to laugh at all these videos that we're doing, remembering all the challenges that we've had.
I will come back and watch these and see where I'm at compared 5 years later.
Yeah, well, we'll have to think of a topic for next week's meeting. I think they seem to go really nicely if we come in with a couple of thoughts, get people thinking. Like I said last week, people didn't have too many questions. They were just listening, and that's okay. Um, but we always like to have people get their questions in early. We've been trying to shorten the meetings a little bit. We used to go 3 hours every week, and now we're trying to shut them down around 7:30. Um, so we'll keep reminding them to get their questions in early.
And Curtis had spawned that video that Dion and Zuber did talking about the 5 years of suck and why Curtis, he's 3 or 4 years in. Why isn't he 3, 4 years closer to his 10-year goal? You reemphasize that saying it's when Dion showed the chart, it's not until the ninth year where there's that hockey stick growth. And I like you reemphasizing that because it just hammers things home. And even Cynthia had talked about even after the 5 years, there's still going to be challenges as you're growing and scaling. So don't think that the 5 years is going to be this magical line that is all of a sudden going to be better.
Yeah,
But it's the truth, and it's good to hear. I think after the 5 years, it'll be exponentially better, but it doesn't mean it's going to be this glorious. At least that's not what I'm expecting.
yeah, you're right. She set us straight that day. And yeah, I was like, what do you mean it's not going to be all puppies and rainbows after that 5 year mark? But and two, we talked about the decisions you make in the first 5 years, right? So ideally, if you're buying a property every year, your deal each year gets better than the last one. But if, say, you're in year three and you make a decision that's not so great, it could extend the 5 years a little bit. So we have to be careful there. I don't want to depress you, but we have to be honest here.
Yeah. It is good in Dion's live stream. He said his book is 500 pages when he actually saw. So I'm looking forward to that and an audible version. Convoy, they had a good video with Zuber, 5.5% rate, greater than 700 credit score, 200,000 minimum loan, 20% LTV, no prepay. So if anyone was interested in that, that'd be good to check out. And I know Justin Canberra was on Mark's Financial Firefighters live stream talking about dad-do opportunities. And I know you're working with him as a possible house hack in Washington. So that's also a great thing to check out. And Lindsay, Linda's Investing, she did a great video if you ever want to see example of infinite return.
Yeah, she did her Burr video. Um, she was able to pay off her HELOC refinancing. I think she said she did two DSCR loans, and we'll have to bug her and get a little more information about that. But yeah, her channel is awesome, and I always love to see Justin. We've talked about how honest and open he is because he says he made some mistakes in the very beginning. Well, and not just in the beginning, right? We keep making mistakes sometimes along our journeys, and he's super helpful. He thinks outside the box. He's always looking for more ways to make money on a property than just buying it and renting it out. So I'm glad we're able to work with him. Hopefully, we'll find a property up there and be able to have a pretty decent retirement. The I think moving forward, we're as far as moving up there, we're lucky. We have a lot of great friends in this community, and it's kind of strange, right? Because we all met on Zoom, but everybody's been great. I really trust everybody that I've met. Um, you, you hear crazy things all the time, like people lending each other money just because they've known each other on Zoom for a couple of years, and I don't know where else you can find that trust, but this group's pretty awesome.
You know, when you're in the
So
trenches together, it makes all the difference, and there's a more camaraderie involved with that.
yeah, that's true. Very true. Well, this was a good one. I'll look forward to catching up with you after the next meeting, and we'll see what happens this week.
Thanks, Frank.
All right. Thank you.